Third, I called Richard Lane to confirm it wouldn't breach my non-compete. You're building a new entity they choose to join. Legally sound, he said. 2 weeks later, the Hayes Publishing Consortium launched with 7 founding members, all former Pinebrook clients. Each pitched in to cover operations. The model was a cooperative that Pinebrook couldn't replicate. Autonomy plus collective resources. I wasn't CEO, just the facilitator matching needs to strengths. We rented a modest warehouse in German Village, away from corporate clusters. I hired 2 staffers, a recent grad for communications and social media, and a retired operations manager not ready to stop working. Word spread. By month's end, 3 more presses joined. By the second month, we'd outgrown our space and moved into larger offices. I didn't have to chase clients. They came to us, drawn by success stories and frustration with digital-first strategies that ignored personal relationships. 2 months after launch, Jacob called. They know what you're doing. Veronica's furious, threatening legal action. There's a board meeting tomorrow. Results will be ugly. That's not my concern anymore, I said. I wanted to ask, is there room for me at your venture? I've reached my limit. Come by tomorrow, I told him. We'll talk. The next day, Pinebrook's earnings call revealed a 45% revenue drop year over year and a 17% stock plunge in a single session. I stayed offline, leading strategy meetings with 15 consortium members for the upcoming Chicago conference. Texts from James hit me. Veronica blamed market disruption and transition turbulence, ignoring that their biggest clients had walked away. That afternoon, Patricia Harrington of the Pinebrook board called. We've waived your non-compete effective immediately, but we're preparing a cease and desist for interference with our client relationships. Do you have a response? I asked. Have you ever sat down with Thomas or Eleanor and asked why they left? Silence. That's irrelevant, she said. It's the only thing that matters, I interrupted. They left because Pinebrook stopped valuing what mattered to them. The board meeting is still in session. Perhaps you'd like to join us. I'm in a meeting with 15 publishers who chose a different path. She was silent. I see, she said, then hung up. The cease and desist never came. 3 days later, the Columbus Dispatch headline read, Pinebrook Press, CEO departs amid financial turmoil. 6 months post-launch, we'd settled into permanent offices in a renovated German Village warehouse. 23 presses on board, a growing waiting list. We'd expanded beyond Ohio to serve Midwestern houses. Features in Publishers Weekly and the New York Times heralded the relationship revolution in publishing. We hadn't set out to spark a movement, just to preserve what worked when people remembered why it mattered. Then Edward Caldwell called again. Pinebrook's new CEO wants to join the consortium. I smiled. That's not how it works. We don't recruit publishers of your size. Perhaps a partnership arrangement, he pressed. I'll share with our council, I replied, knowing the answer. Our members joined to escape the corporate model Pinebrook once embodied. Later, I walked our open-plan workspace. No corner office for me, just a desk among equals, staying plugged into daily conversations that kept us grounded. Jacob looked up. Everything okay? Just fine, I nodded. Heard Pinebrook wants to join, he laughed. Talk about coming full circle. That afternoon, I drove to the Scioto Mile and sat by the river, the same spot where I used to wrestle with challenges at Pinebrook. But today there were no problems to solve, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd built something enduring. Not because it was disruptive, but because it rested on something permanent. People trusting people who've earned it. Sometimes, getting fired is the best thing that can happen because it forces you to build something more authentic than what you left behind. Your old-school tactics won't survive our next chapter, Celeste Monroe declared as she handed me the termination notice. I'm Morgan Hayes, and for 16 years I led the Great Lakes sales team at Pinebrook Press out of Columbus, Ohio. I didn't need flashy dashboards or marketing bots, just genuine connections, firm handshakes, and a gut for what each imprint truly needed. By last quarter, my region accounted for nearly 2/3 of the company's entire revenue, yet nobody beyond my office door seemed to notice, until those numbers landed in the C-suite inboxes. Celeste arrived 6 months ago, flown in from a Silicon Valley startup with slick slides and a battalion of consultants preaching digital-first disruption at every meeting. Publishing was unfamiliar territory for her, but the board drank her Kool-Aid. I stayed focused on deals until I felt her gaze drilling through the screen during our quarterly updates, the only director still carrying a leather planner and meeting authors face-to-face. The summons came on a drizzly Tuesday morning. Evan, her uneasy executive assistant, knocked on my glass-walled office at 2 p.m. sharp. "She's ready for you." I wrapped up a call with Harrison and Locke, where I'd just sealed a $14 million, 5-year renewal over dinner last month, relationships forged outside boardrooms over steak and stories. The redesigned boardroom felt like an art gallery. Bare concrete floors, a 90-inch video wall, and no trace of the mahogany table I'd once presented sales forecasts on. Celeste, Evan, and a stern HR rep I'd never met waited. Before she spoke, I already knew. "Morgan, your contributions have been invaluable," Celeste began, hands folded neatly on the table. "But we're steering toward a new paradigm, one built on algorithms, not anecdotes." She paused, the unspoken and younger hanging in the air. 15 years distilled into 15 minutes. I shook her hand, packed my mementos without a word, and walked out. Publishing, especially among legacy houses, thrives on trust, not software. I cleared my desk alone, then sat in my car staring at 3 missed calls from Laura Harrison. Pinebrook was once Midwest Literary Collective, 20 employees, a dozen local clients. I'd left my corner office at Heritage and Reed because I believed books deserve champions, not data miners. Robert Pine, our founder, once told me, "We don't need number crunchers, we need people who love stories." For the first decade, I drove over 100,000 miles knocking on doors from Michigan to Kentucky, proving him right. I knew the names of their spouses, the birthdays of their children. I showed up at weddings, funerals, retirement dinners, not as a tactic, but because that's who I was. When Robert Pine retired and Marcus took over, we'd already grown 350%. Marcus understood the business, even if he cared more about metrics than his father, and he let me keep running things my way. 3 years ago, when the board talked about modernizing operations, Marcus resisted. But when illness claimed him last year at 57, no one was left to defend the old ways. Cracks appeared long before Celeste arrived. Meetings were obsolete echoed through the conference room, questions about why we hadn't automated our CRM or embraced social media. Alicia, my assistant director and heir apparent, started getting invited to strategy meetings I was excluded from. "They're creating a digital unit separate from traditional channels," she warned me 6 months ago. I should have noticed when they quietly reassigned my long-term clients to that new team. Harper and North called, furious to learn they had a new account manager. "They say it's to optimize customer service," their director fumed. "What's happening over there?" I replied, "Just a reorganization," but inside I was uneasy. I didn't know how to fight a battle when I didn't recognize the weapons. The morning after my termination, I sat in my home office staring at my phone. 19 missed calls, 37 texts, 8 urgent emails, all from clients and partners who already knew. I hadn't told Emma, my wife, who was with our daughter in Cincinnati. I needed to process it alone. The call that finally broke the silence came from Laura Harrison. "What the hell happened?" she demanded. "They're going in a new direction." I repeated the corporate line. Laura sighed. "You were the heart of that press. Do they even realize that?" I said nothing. That new guy spent 40 minutes on metrics, 0 mention of our historical fiction imprint, the one we'd banked on this year's success. I closed my eyes, exhausted in a way nothing to do with sleep. "They'll learn the hard way," I said. After hanging up, I opened the HR email. 6 months' pay, 90 days of health coverage, non-disparagement, and a 1-year non-compete. I laughed. A piece of paper couldn't sever decades-old relationships. Moments later, Avery Pratt from Redwood Publishing called. "I'm sorry this happened," she said. "When you're ready to talk about future projects, let me know." That evening, I sat in my backyard with a bourbon, the idea that had been a seed that morning blossoming with each call. They discarded me for not fitting their shiny new digital playbook, but what if that outdated approach was exactly what my clients valued? What if the weakness Celeste saw was my greatest strength? I dialed my attorney, Richard Lane. "I need you to review my non-compete clause." He sounded surprised. "You were dismissed?" "Yes," I confirmed, "and I think it might be the best thing that's ever happened to me." 2 days later in his office, Richard explained, "You can start your own consultancy, but they'll sue you just to wear you down. They have deep pockets. I asked, what if I don't approach anyone directly? He smiled. That changes things. The next day, I registered Hayes Publishing Advisory. No website, no marketing campaign, just a legal entity ready to offer services. 2 weeks later, Marcela Torres at Crescent Books reached out about a partnership. In under a month, I signed contracts worth over 30% of the annual revenue I once generated at Pinebrook. My office became wherever I chose: cafes, client headquarters, video calls. My road miles and paper notepads had never been more active. And for the first time since that meeting ended everything, I felt the next chapter of my career was truly mine. 3 days later, James Locke rang me. I hear you've set up shop, he said. News travels fast. In publishing, it's like wildfire, I replied. I need your insight on our winter catalog, he said. My gut tells me doubling down on heritage fiction is the right play. I need someone who knows both spreadsheets and storylines. I'm mapping out my next move, I answered. He offered $20,000 for 2 months advisory work, carefully avoiding non-compete conflicts. Think it over, we decide next week. Later that evening, Alicia, my former assistant director, asked to meet at a quiet cafe near Eagle Creek Park. She arrived nervous, glancing over her shoulder. They promoted me, but I'm only a figurehead. They reassigned all your accounts and rolled out a CRM half our reps can't use. 3 have already quit. And the clients? I asked. They're furious. Riverstone is threatening to leave. Harrison and Locke hasn't returned calls. Projections are disastrous, and Veronica calls it expected turbulence. She slid me an envelope, an updated contact list with personal emails and cell numbers. Don't say you got this from me. She left before I could respond. I sat in that cafe long after she left. Using that list would justify every legal threat Pinebrook could muster. It was a trap. I walked away, leaving the envelope behind. A week later, Edward Caldwell, Pinebrook's board chairman, invited me to the Chicago club. Over glasses of aged bourbon, he spelled it out. Revenue was down 35%, client retention at an all-time low, the digital overhaul driving partners away. We want you back as chief revenue officer, superseding Celeste, he said. He offered to double my salary, give me full authority, and the board's backing. I listened as he explained how William Pine's illness had left the board no choice but to defer to Celeste, despite reservations. Your departure was never board approved, Edward admitted. We lacked the courage to stop it, until now. Driving home, I realized they weren't just seeking my expertise, they wanted my client network and the loyalty I commanded. That clarity didn't anger me, it confirmed my path. The next morning, I sent Edward a brief email declining the offer. I would chart my own course. His counteroffer arrived minutes later. I didn't reply. Instead, I made 3 calls. First to James Locke. I'm ready to consult, but not one-on-one. I'm forming a consortium of independent presses, pooling resources, distribution, and market intelligence. No contracts, no red tape, publishers helping publishers, with me as the connector. He was silent. Then, I'm in, and I know at least 5 others who will be too. Next, I rang Eleanor Jenkins at Riverstone Press. She embraced the idea and proposed a shared digital platform, giving smaller houses the reach of a major publisher without sacrificing independence.